mentioned that you used to drive with Kevin Sullivan on occasion. Were you driving with him during the whole situation with him and Benoit, when Benoit, I guess, basically took his wife away from him?
Yes, and that was interesting. They tried to kayfabe it from me, and I used to drive with me and a guy named Pee Wee Anderson. He was a referee. They tried to, well, first it was an angle. Then the angle turned real. I don't know exactly when the angle turned real. I was riding with Kevin. I was friends with Chris. I ended up living in the same city in Atlanta, Peachtree City, with Chris when him and Nancy were together. The wrestlers that lived in that city were me, Fit Finley, Steve Regal, William Regal, and Chris, and we would hang out together. And there was another cameraman who was Darwin, who was a longtime cameraman who lived out there. So we would all hang out together on the weekends or during the week when it wouldn't work.
You'd be on flights together like that.
Yeah. But also socialize, like, you know, on like if we had a Saturday night off, we'd all go to the local Japanese steakhouse and, you know, drink and sing karaoke and stuff. And I got to see things. I got to see a side of. We got to see. Those people got to see a side of Chris that nobody else ever thought. And I don't want to jump ahead of any question you might have, but Chris was a nice guy, great talent, but there was always something that was a little bit off. And so
Rene Dupree actually told us in our interview with him that when he saw Chris consume alcohol, he saw a glimpse into a different side of him.
Drink what?
Alcohol, like when Chris would have alcohol in it.
I don't even know that it was alcohol, but there was another side of Chris, and we all saw it. And I don't know if you remember. I don't want to jump ahead.
We'll cover the Chris Benoit.
Yeah, the answer to your question is I was driving with Kevin. It was very uncomfortable. I don't know when it got real and when it got and when it wasn't. But there were several uncomfortable situations that I was in that not for any fault of any of the parties, just, you know, the way things happened. There was several uncomfortable situations that I was put in that I obviously wish that I wasn't a part of, but unfortunately I was, and the rest is history.
And what are your views on what happened with Chris and Nancy? Because I guess you must have known Nancy pretty well as well.
What ultimately happened? Yeah. Well, if you watch the tribute that the WWE did to Chris when they didn't know what had happened, everybody talked glowingly about Chris. Chris was very popular. Chris was a nice guy, a fun guy. He liked to rib people. You know, he quiet for the most part, but could be a fun guy. But there was a side of Chris, and I mentioned again, we saw a side of him in Peachtree City, that little group in Peachtree City. Johnny Grunge was part of that group, by the way, too, which is an important part of the whole story that others didn't see. And when I was taking a nap the day that we found out it all happened, and when my son woke me up, same house I live in right now, and when my son woke me up and said, Chris and Nancy and Daniel are dead, first thing that went through my head is, did he kill her or did she kill him? Didn't have a thought in the world that it was anything else. But if you look back at that tape, William Regal said, I don't want to talk about Chris the person, I want to talk Chris the wrestler, because he knew the same thing. He was in that clique. And it's sad. It's sad that they had very slowly taken themselves out of that group and start to really be private. Even to that group that we used to hang out with. They moved to a different house. None of us knew that. He had put up big gates. None of us knew that. The only one they felt comfortable talking to, Chris and Nancy, about any of their issues, was Johnny Grunge. Johnny Grunge was a fun guy, kind of a screw up, you know, did a lot of, you know, drank a lot, got in trouble, stupid stuff. Nancy knew him from ECW. Chris knew him from WCW. And I think that Chris and Nancy were very concerned that people would think that there was something wrong with them because they were having problems. So they didn't want to share their problems with any of their friends. So the one guy they could both go to was Grunge, because Grunge was kind of the screw-up, fun guy, and he was never going to, you know, think anything bad. I think anything bad about them, and he helped them a lot of time. And I truly believe, to this day, without a doubt in my mind, that if Johnny Grunge didn't die, that Chris and Nancy and Daniel would be alive. He was their only go-to outlet, and when he passed, they had nowhere else to go. And it's just really sad. What do you say about it? There are people that just lose, that are off a little bit, and they click. We hear about it every day, whether it's some guy shooting up a mall or all the crazy stories we hear. Unfortunately, I used to be friends with one of them.
And what do you say about all these idiots out there that I guess are just super Chris Benoit fans that claim that this is all a big conspiracy and Kevin Sullivan had something to do with this?
I say that they need to go back and find another conspiracy, because there's not a chance. There's more of a chance than Donald Trump is working for Vladimir Putin as we speak. Than that happened. It's absolutely. Look, I saw it with my own eyes. People saw it with their own eyes. The dysfunction that they had, pulling away, all the symptoms, like I told you. When I was informed what happened, I didn't have a doubt that one killed the other. My only sadness was that Daniel didn't survive. He didn't deserve it. And look, let's be honest. And Nancy was a great person and a good friend. Nancy was rough. Nancy was a tough girl. Nancy could go at it too. So it wasn't like Chris was beating his wife and Nancy's going. They were pulling back and forth at each other, and it was almost like who's going to flip, who's going to really go overboard over the edge first. And you hope that they would be able to make it work. But like I said, if grunge was alive, there's not a doubt in my that night, whatever happened, Chris would have left, would have driven to grunges, and they would have talked. And then Chris would have come home, Nancy would have driven to grunges, they would have talked, and then 2 days later, all three of them would have laughed about it. Not a doubt in my mind. So.
And there was some rumors that I guess came out that apparently the son wasn't really sick, but there were some rumors at the time of the death that there were some health issues with the son.
He was small for his size, but so was Chris's other adult boy at that age. I never got the real story on that. To be honest with you, they were talking about some syndrome that he had. I had never heard that. Once a story becomes out in the open like that in this day and age of social media and the 24-hour news cycle, the Nancy Graces of the world went to town on it, and so much stuff came out. Everybody's yearning for information. I actually turned down 3 requests to do not 60 minutes, 48 hours. They went after everybody in his clique, and nobody would do it. And I wouldn't have talked to you about this back then, only because it's been so much time, and so many others have spoke about different Chris's. Do I feel comfortable telling what I saw and what I think? Back at the day, I didn't want to get anywhere near it. I mean, there was a horrible thing that happened.